It's about attention, right? Where are your engineers spending their attention? Where are your salespeople? Where's their attention focused? If a certain vendor can get you focused on their widget or their solution, then when you're talking to your customers, you're going to bring up their widget. It's not complicated. It's just a game that these guys play to get your attention.
Welcome to the Incident Report presented by Quest Technology Management. I'm Paul Burke, Director of Technology Communications. Every week, I'm joined by VP of Sales and Partnerships, Adam Burke. The Incident Report brings you skills, tactics, and channel news to help you stay productive and agile in a changing technology landscape. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Incident Report. This is episode 80. I don't do this show alone. My name's Paul. I also do it with Adam Burke. Adam, how are you doing?
Paul, I'm doing great. And just, for our loyal listenership and audience out there, I just want to commend you and also make fun of you briefly on the intro here because, one, this is episode 81, Paul, because I made an amazing Jerry Rice reference on episode 80, which is our last episode.
That's sad for multiple reasons because I was excited to make a football reference today because I was like, 80, that's Jerry Rice. So I probably didn't even know that, but like my unconscious remembers that you did it just a couple weeks ago. So disappointment all around. Starting the show with disappointment.
In your defense, you're playing hurt, much like the 49ers this weekend tragically played for 3 quarters and fell victim to a pretty good solid comeback by the Rams. We're not going to talk about that. This isn't a sports show, so we're not going to analyze that, but you are playing hurt today, got a little bit of a cold. So appreciate you still jumping on to knock out the podcast, even though you're playing hurt.
Other than the Niners losing, how are things going?
Going good, Paul. Excited. We're coming up on October, and in October, I'm going to be running 100 miles in the desert, and I'm raising some money for charity. So pretty excited about that. Been training for about the last 8 months. I promise not to talk about it again. Probably annoy everyone, like someone who runs a marathon for the first time. Like that's all they talk about. Not doing that. This is the only time I think I've ever brought up on the podcast, except for one time 3 episodes ago. It's called the Javelin 100. It's my first ultra. Got some buddies in the channel who run and are going to be coming out to support me and pace me on the run, which is awesome. We had Brandon on the podcast talking about his Leadville experience a year ago. And then also Patrick Oborn from Talaris is going to be pacing me as well. So super excited about it. But that's on a personal note, so I don't want to bore the people with that.
Can your fans come out and watch and support you?
Oh, can they? Yes, it's a fun ultra. And I think the family's gonna come out, maybe put a sign up, whatever. But it's a 5-loop, 20-mile course basically, and it actually kind of turned into a little bit of a party. I'm actually raising money for a Christian charity, and this one is actually kind of a Halloween-inspired dance disco party where clothing is optional on the evening run. So I didn't do my recon that well on raising money for a Christian charity at a Halloween, clothing optional disco run in the evening where they kind of have a high-spirited Halloween costume event for the night runners. I'm not partaking in that myself.
You're not dressing up as like a dachshund?
No,
running around?
No, I'm not. No, but they it's called Javelina headquarters, and a bunch of people like dress up like Dia de los Muertos people and like all sorts of cool costumes, and they run like a 30K at night with like glow in the dark stuff on, and I'm sure everyone's completely sober, but it's an evening festival.
And it's a clothing optional festival?
Well, that's where like one of my buddies was like, because I sent out this thing, I'm raising money for really cool, a Christian organization that does called Feed My Starving Children, and they get food to like people who are at risk of starving around the world. And they have about a 99% efficacy of getting the food to the people who actually need it. A lot of times,
Wow.
The bad actors in certain realms will kind of hold the food hostage and not let it get to the people. So, but these guys, Feed My Starving Children out of Mesa, Arizona, have a really, really high success rate of getting the food actually on the ground to the people who are actually at risk of starving to death. So it's for children. And so really cool group. We do like packing parties and things like that to get that stuff packed up and shipped out. But anyways, one of my buddies at church was like, "Hey man, interesting ultra you picked to raise money for." And I was like, "Why? What do you mean?" And he sends me this picture of this dude who's kind of like got a little like, I don't think it's he's got a little bit of a loincloth going on running through the desert for the evening run. And it was I think he was dressed up as someone. He's like, "This is the charity." I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's a sporting group. It's good." So It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Probably TMI on a couple of things. We'll call HR after this podcast. It'll be fine. We'll be fine. So
Does the 20-mile loop like weave through a nudist colony?
no, it does not. No, no, not at
Okay.
all. No.
Okay.
And that's just a celebratory. There's a 30K at night. It's called the evening run where they do it's like a dance party and a bunch of costumes, while the rest of us are out there kind of suffering through the 100 miles. We start 6 a.m. on Saturday, and I'm hoping to finish sometime Sunday morning. So that's the goal, man. It's gonna be good.
Oh, okay. I did not understand that. So it's not the night prior to the event. It's while you guys are out there.
Yeah, it's going to be a little weird because if you've ever
Yeah.
if you've ever been sleep deprived, or if you've ever like not, basically if you've ever been sleep deprived or had a physically exertion long challenge, sometimes you can hallucinate a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you can kind of see things, or like you see like a rock and you think it's a dog, or like I was on a
Or
long.
you think it's a rock and you think it's a man running by in a loincloth.
Yes, yes. So I'm kind of and all of a sudden you see like someone in a tutu with a Dia de los Muertos like skeleton face painted on him, like running towards you in the dark. Probably gonna freak out a little bit. Might freak out a little bit in the desert, but you just gotta stay on the path, avoid the cactuses. Everyone will be fine. But yeah, that's so it is that evening. So we all the people who are doing the 100 miler start at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, and then you do your 20-mile loops, right? And then so by the time it gets dark, you're probably I don't know, on your third or fourth loop. Probably the professionals are probably finishing in like 14 hours because they're savages, which is awesome. But yeah, so we'll be getting into probably Brandon or Patrick be picking up them as pacers as it gets dark, and we'll see some glow sticks and some face paint. It'll be fun.
I feel like the three of you are going to be like those kids on the last day of school where everybody else is like partying and just like it's the last day and you're like, well, it's one more day to learn and get ready for next year. And you guys are going to be very focused and like making sure your times are accurate and everybody else is just drinking and running by and partying.
Well, no, well, I think that there'll be I think there's like 500 of us running the 100, so we'll be in good company of suffering. It'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There'll be a lot of
Nice.
running folks out there. It'll be fun.
Well, that's the podcast.
This is the Incident Report and Ultra Running for Novices podcast. Thanks for joining.
No, let's get into it. So Adam, you highlighted a couple interesting stories, which I think are great to talk about. One, Amazon and Cisco and their different approaches to just company culture, I guess you would say, just ways of approaching getting people back to work or letting people go. Do you want to kind of add some details into that?
Yeah, so Amazon came out with a policy. I think it surprised a lot of people. I think it took some of the different generations of the workforce by surprise. I think the Gen Z and millennials definitely had a couple different choice reactions on social media and LinkedIn and other areas. But basically, Amazon has a back to work policy that is a pretty significant change from COVID and their remote forever, and hey, we're never going to go into an office again kind of culture in the tech space. And a lot of the firms, it started with JP Morgan about a year ago. It started in the banking industry and kind of has trickled down into some of the larger technology firms. But basically they said, hey, everybody's coming back to work 5 days a week starting January 2025. Thank you very much for everything you've done. And we'll see you in the office starting January. Which, if you look at certain things that are going on in the economy right now, I don't know what they're seeing. I don't know what they're seeing from a licensing, subscription, or distribution, or customer or consumer behavior standpoint. But I'm gonna go a little off the beaten path here for a minute, Paul. So ride with me here. But the Federal Reserve just announced last week that they have all these Fed governors, right? And they do this thing called the dot plot, and they all kind of guess, like everyone kind of guesses like what the Feds are going to do with interest rate policy. Well, everyone was expecting for a long time that the Feds were going to cut interest rates by 25 basis points. So basically, they were going to take if you're cutting by 25 basis points, you're going from 5% interest rates to 4.75 interest rates for for basically the cost of money. And what they ended up doing was they doubled that, right? They doubled that reduction in interest rates. And what that means in this part of the economic cycle, they're basically signaling that They're seeing something out. They're not telling us, which is always appreciated, but they're seeing something in their evaluation because they have a dual mandate. They have to basically maintain high employment, right? So keep unemployment below 4% or at 4%, and they need to curtail and runaway inflation. So they're thinking they got inflation under control, and the labor
Hmm.
market's still pretty tight, and so they're cutting interest rates, but that's signaling that they think something down the road could be challenging because the higher interest rates, they're basically wanting to get more money into the system to stimulate growth. And so they kind of doubled their interest rate cut, which not quite.
Adam, I believe that's what they call a soft landing. They're hoping for that soft landing.
Yes, yes. And that's a great term that kind of like calms the waters for everyone. But the monetary policy that's happened over the last like 5 years has never ever been attempted before, ever. Like anyone who thinks they know what's going to happen next they have no idea. Just had dinner with a very smart financial advisor, partner of a large bank institution last night. He's got some ideas, but even at his level, like, and we're talking senior level partner at a major financial institution, no real idea as far as basically it's like, hey, diversify your assets. So anyways, back to the Amazon and Fed analogy. They cut interest rates, so they kind of signaled to the market, hey, there might be some lumpiness going into 2025. Obviously, we got the election and then other things coming up. So it might be some lumpiness there. And then, then you have Amazon, which is one of the largest employers in the country, basically comes out with, hey, by 2025, you need to come back into work. And I don't know I'm not saying this is nefarious or like manipulative or passive aggressive, but it could be, because there are going to be people who decided to work for Amazon and maybe were working remotely and maybe move from, like, what people classify as, and I hate this term, but it is what it is. I hate that term too. Tier 1 cities, right? So the Seattles, the San Franciscos, the San Jose's, the Los Angeleses, the Dallas, the New York City. A lot of people kind of left those cities and moved to like tier 2 cities, right? They moved to areas where they could afford housing, or where they could get a little more space, or they could be a little bit, and they could work remotely, right? This policy gives them basically 1 quarter to transition all that life move that took over the last 4 years back to a tier 1 city commute situation. Basically, and there's going to be people who quit. There's going to be people who say, I
Hmm.
can't do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to leave and go find employment elsewhere. And candidly, I think that's the game plan. I think the back to work policy is a basically self-selection of, hey, who really wants to work here and who can we do without? And I think
Hmm.
those some of those guys are playing that game rather than the alternative to that, right? If you want to, if you see challenges coming down the road, Cisco just basically fired, and you don't say fired anymore unless you're Trump, you're fired. They they reduced headcount in a layoff of about 7,000 people, right? Which is always amazing to me when you hear these huge
Hmm.
numbers like, dang, 7,000 people? Yeah. 7,000 people were just removed from Cisco's employment roles in a reduction of force, which to me is a little bit more direct. Like, hey, they don't see the requirements for this demand. They don't see the needs for these people to be there. They're making the business decision, and they're reducing to do that. Now, it was weird if you look at the stock price of what happened to Amazon or what happened to Cisco when both of these statements were made. I'm always surprised whenever we've seen these rifts before with Cisco and with other large manufacturers. You see this massive reduction in headcount, and you think like, well, shoot, when you look at their stock price, it's kind of gross, but it's the reality of the situation. The stock price pops pretty significantly on that reduction in force announcement.
Hmm.
We're kind of, at Quest, we're kind of more in the operational space. So like we're like working with customers and dealing with what opportunities and pipeline and what's coming down the road. So if you all of a sudden release 7,000 people, our minds are kind of programmed along the lines of like, wow, what's the problem? Like there must be something under the covers that is a challenge, right?
Mhm.
Right. So, well, why is everyone coming back to work at Amazon? Like, what's going on in their business model? But with the Cisco one specifically, when they did that reduction in force, the stock popped, and that's just the way the market is built, because all that labor cost just goes immediately to the bottom line, right? And if the stock's evaluated on a price to earnings ratio and on a valuation ratio, you cut 7,000 jobs, with expenses and blah blah blah. Imagine that the average employee there was making around 200,000. Quick, quick beer math of you know 7,000 people times 200 grand, right? You're 1.4 billion dollars, right? So that's real money, real valuation. That's why the stock pops. It has nothing to do with actually looking at the operations and being like, hey, might be some trouble in the next couple of months. Like they're laying off 7,000 people. Like why? No, no, no. It almost the opposite happens in the market, which is weird. I always think that's kind of odd, but that's just the do you have a little bit financial evaluation of a company versus the operational, you know, forecasting of like, hey, what are we seeing down the path? And I think for channel partners and for our audience and for people out there kind of in the trenches, like dealing with customer challenges and hey, are they purchasing that refresh? Are they needing help with that upgrade? Are they doing that migration project? Symbols like this, like the Fed slashing interest rates by 50 basis points when they were
Mhm.
forecasting half of that, Amazon, you know, broadcasting to their thousands upon thousands of workforce out there who's working remote, hey, you got to come back to the office in 2025 or go away. And then Cisco reducing, by 7,000 people. Pretty significant messages to those of us who are maybe not playing I'm not saying they're playing financial games, but they're in the public market, so they're playing financial games. Like they see something. There's something out there that's happening. Like no one does that for no reason. No one changes their remote workforce policy for no reason, and no one slashes 7,000 jobs for no reason. And the feds definitely don't just lower interest rates haphazardly. That's my spin on those kind of things there, Paul. I don't know. Well, I mean, what do you think?
I think it's interesting when I listen to what you're saying about it that clearly they see something out there. I'm more interested in like why can't anybody else see it? Like what are they privy to that other people aren't privy to?
I mean, that's a great question because I don't really know, but there are trends that people can see in like ordering patterns. And these guys, what's amazing about these organizations, like, and that's where I think like the 7,000, reduction in force comes from. These guys are getting inputs from all different areas, and they're seeing a landscape that we're not seeing. I mean, imagine the amount of orders that Amazon. I mean, just in our extended family, Paul. Like how many Amazon packages are probably getting delivered to my front door, your front door, our sisters, our cousins, our brothers, everyone around. Amazon sees that delivery for everybody. They see that application usage for every company they work with. So they're seeing something. And then the Federal Reserve, they see tax receipts and they see all the banking information for all the folks that are, taking loans and taking, extending credit and all that kind of stuff. So they're seeing a ton of data, but we
Mhm.
don't get to see it, right? So we got to kind of like try to read the tea leaves or understand what they're doing. So it's a struggle. I don't know why people can't see it, but everyone's trying to figure it out at the same time and trying to figure out what's the best
Mhm.
thing to do for their organization.
Speaking about best things to do for organizations, second article, Adam, you wanted to talk about was channel partners reveal the pros and cons of channel programs. This was a great piece about the issues and challenges of being a channel partner, vendors not revealing, not helping enough. Sometimes channel partners feel like the vendors aren't helping enough, and sometimes the vendors don't feel like channel partners are communicating enough on leads and leads that go quiet and just there's not enough communication. It kind of seems to come down to communication. Also seems to come down to money because a big portion of this article is, hey, we're not getting enough money, and vendors are like, hey, we're giving out too much money relative to the leads. So I don't know. What did you think about the piece?
Well, I loved it in the idea of like no matter what not necessarily no matter what you do, but there's always a challenge in this space around who's getting the leads, who's getting the money, who's getting the lion's share of the opportunities, all that kind of stuff. And there's some where I love reading this kind of stuff is because Quest operates
Hmm.
in both worlds. And so we're a supplier to a lot of our IT advisor and consultant and our partner community, right? So we do things that other VARs don't do. We do things that other consultant groups don't do. And they will come to us and say, hey, can you help me do this? And we kind of we run a channel program. So we have a channel program, right? And we're always trying to get feedback from our partners like, hey, what works well? What do you like? What do you not like? Oftentimes you hear like, hey, I think you should pay more for this, or I think, I think you could, do better here. So we're always getting feedback, but we're also a consumer, right? So we don't have anything, we don't sell a proprietary technology, right? So we source from large manufacturers, we source from large software providers, all that kind of stuff. And we have these reseller agreements. So this article breaks down a lot of, common things that we hear, but also things that I think that we've said. One of the classic ones that this is something I can definitively say we don't do, but I've had happen to us multiple times. And it's kind of like a known bait and switch in the industry that, Paul, Lucy in the football, Lucy in the football,
Yeah, with Charlie Brown.
Charlie Brown. I feel like Charlie Brown sometimes because you talk to a vendor or manufacturer and they tell you about all these great leads and they got all this backed up pipeline. If only you get like 3 or 4 of your engineers certified in this technology and 4 of your sales reps certified and go through this course, and you are just going to be rained down upon with endless supply of leads and opportunities if you just go through this KPI checklist for this channel manager who's trying to get you through their onboarding process as a vendor. It's with every software manufacturer, it's with every hardware manufacturer. Like, we all know the game, but man, do you fall for it so many times? Like, oh yeah, that sounds pretty good. It's pretty cool stuff. Yeah, let's get some people trained up on it. And you almost get a little cynical because Lucy, you'll get trained, you'll get up to, you'll get kind of go through the process. And then once you get through all that, you're like, all right, where's the funnel? You said you're going to pass me all your leads now. And it's weird. Like, Lucy grabs the football and pulls it up. And now there's like, hey, let's do some account mapping. Let's do some lead generation together. Let's do blah, blah, blah. And they create this story of like, well, they don't like gaslight you. I hate that term, gaslighting, but it's kind of like the story of like, yeah. No, I know we said there was going to be tons of professional services, integration, and resale opportunities here. But what we're really going to do is we're going to go have a webinar together, and we're going to go do blah, blah, blah demand generation effort together. It's like, well, but didn't we just spend like $30,000 or $20,000 getting some engineers trained up on this? Yeah. But now we're going to go do this. So it's like this kind of this game of like, well, and everyone knows they're doing it to each other. This article
Hmm.
calls it out pretty, specifically, which I appreciate. But it is
Hmm.
a game, and you see that game, multiple times because it's like our boy, Gary V. Haven't had him on the podcast yet, but we'll get our booking agent on it. It's about attention, right? Where are your engineers spending their attention? Where are your salespeople? Where's their attention focused? And if
Hmm.
a certain vendor can get you focused on their widget or their solution, then when you're talking to your customers, you're going to bring up their widget. I mean, it's not complicated. It's not some 4D chess like release the Kraken kind of concept. It's just a game that these guys play to get your attention. I don't do that. So that's one thing I can say of all of these complaints in here in our channel program. I'm almost like probably too candid with our partners. Like, hey, here's the situation. This is the landscape. This is the competitive landscape. Here's what you're going to deal with. We can help you. We do a really good job with it. But here's the battle plan. You want to go to war? And that's kind of the candid conversation we have.
Mm.
I don't like the bait and switch. I think it's kind of it leaves a bad taste in my mouth, and I can't do it. But that is kind of the nature of the game for a lot of suppliers. Like you said, I think it all kind of comes down to just down to communication. Like, hey, what are partners looking for? What are vendors looking for? And if you can get those Venn diagrams to cross over and align, I think that's great. And that's where you focus your energy and time. You're not, some partners are going to be really, really upset about, not being 100% in alignment with folks. And, I think suppliers sometimes are going to want a little bit too much from their partners. Like, hey, these guys and gals have thousands of things to sell and position and understand what their clients are dealing with. They're not going to be thinking about you all the time, right? So I think that communication, kind of like you brought up, it really boils down to money and communication. And sometimes people don't like talking about the money aspect of it. I do, because I think that drives behavior, right? How people are compensated drives behavior. And then the expectations, the only way you can effectively set expectations is talking about it candidly. So, we love having those feedback loops with our partners. We do, lots of reviews and capability discussions and things like that. Critical for any successful partner program.
I think that's such a great way of looking at things. Are you the Charlie Brown? Are you the Lucy? Be aware of money and how that affects behavior, and communication, even if it's uncomfortable, is always important. Adam, anything coming up this week you want to talk about?
Closing out the third quarter here. I hope everyone had a great end of their summer. We're jumping into fall. Again, suffering through the 1-2 start for the beloved 49ers. So hopefully we get that squared away and improved soon. But no, doing good. How about you?
Adam, we did not mention that we have a cybersecurity sales bootcamp coming up, available for anybody who would like to learn about services in cybersecurity. It was one of our most popular things we did last year. We're doing it again. You can register for the bootcamp. It's coming up October 9th, 2024, 10 a.m. Pacific. It's a WebEx call. Understanding the cybersecurity landscape. This session introduces technology advisors to the fundamental aspects of cybersecurity. It emphasizes the importance of understanding client needs and aligning them with appropriate cybersecurity services. The focus is on preparing partners to have informed, reality-based discussions with their clients. Sign up, totally free, great insight available for everybody. We hope to see you there. But other than that, I don't have anything.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Have a great week, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. The Incident Report is brought to you by Quest Technology Management. With over 40 years of experience, Quest is a leading technology integrator working seamlessly with your staff and systems to achieve your IT goals. Learn more about everything they do at questsys.com. And if you have questions or suggestions for the podcast, you can always email Adam and myself at theincidentreport@questsys.com. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.